business continuity, keeping your business running in the face of whatever threat is out there. So that's what everybody's mission should be. And I think we all have dealt with and are dealing with, who would have ever thought we would be dealing with this pandemic? So I think, we've talked about this is innovating your business right now for success post-COVID. I mean, we're still in COVID, but we want to find ways that all of our businesses can thrive. So for us to be able to thrive, I've been calling it, what's the new better going to look like? Instead of the new normal, we want the new better. And, because I think we can make our businesses really look better and thrive in a better world. So if you've got that going, I'll take the next slide, Darlene. Thank you. So here are my suggestions and my thoughts. From a business continuity standpoint, you want to be a business that's known as resilient. It doesn't matter what happens to your business, you can continue running your business in the face of any threat, and you can do that seamlessly. So the fact of the matter is disasters are not going to stop just because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So if you think about it, we've got wildfires going crazy on the West Coast, we've got hurricanes on the East Coast, we've got protests and unrest all around this country. And we're, in this economy, it's a very difficult time. And we have active shooters. And I spend a lot of time training and working with businesses to prepare for all of that. So one of the first things I would tell you is put together, if you don't already have one, put together a written business continuity plan. And that is going to make you resilient because it's going to force you as a business to look at where your gaps are. What are your gaps that will keep you from being resilient and keep you from being able to provide those services to your customers and your clients seamlessly in the face of any threat? So a written business continuity plan is going to become your playbook for moving forward and moving into the new better. And to do that, I mean, I spend a lot of time working with businesses on how to put together those business continuity plans, but there's a lot of different things that you need to put in your business continuity plan. And depending on what your business is, you'll know what those things are. But one of the things that I would suggest is a business impact assessment. And that is looking at all of the different teams and departments that you have within your business and looking at all the processes and procedures within those departments and teams and making sure they're still working correctly. The fact is everybody's working from home. You may be a business where some people are still working in an office, but are all the procedures and processes that you currently have in place, are they still correct? Are you still managing? Are they the right things? And this is something that I think a lot of people would say, oh, this is difficult to do, especially with people working remotely. But this is the time to go back to all those procedures you have in place, maybe rip them all apart and start all over again, because that will make you, put you into the new better. And again, will keep you resilient. And while you're doing that, while you're looking at your business impact assessment, you're also looking at who are the key critical people in your firm. Or your business. I think that's probably has become evident with those people that are able to work remotely seamlessly, and if you've been able to keep your business going. But while you're doing all of that, make sure that you still stay vigilant about how your business is run from a financial standpoint. And I know my Truist colleagues are going to speak more to that, but be vigilant about, if you've been in the past, prior to the pandemic, if you've been a business that people were paying you every 30, 60, 90 days, and you were budgeting for that, make sure you're not just letting all that slide, because if you are, then that's going to hurt you in the long run. I spend a lot of time listening in on webinars, especially these days in the real estate markets, because of office space needs and what that really means for the new better. And this is the time when businesses are looking at all of their space and determining whether they're going to need that going forward. In the law firm world, the legal world that I'm so familiar with, having a big space and a fancy, flashy, showy law firm was always important in the past. And it's clear now if people can start working or have been able to work from home and the law firm can still continue providing those services to clients, then they don't really need all that space. And so you're going to start seeing businesses looking at what space they have and do they really need it, what's more efficient from a budgeting standpoint, and looking at everybody working from home and do they need to come back to the office? Can they continue to work from home? What does that mean for our overall business continuity plan? I think looking at your third-party suppliers and your supply chains is probably one of the most critical things from a business continuity standpoint that you can do to make you a new, better business. Unfortunately, I'm talking beyond toilet paper and hand sanitizer. Things I'm thinking about are the resources that your businesses uses every day. And especially if we get to a point where people are going to start going back to work and working back in an office on a daily basis. Now, I think we're going to see a lot of hybrid models. I think we're going to see models of businesses never going back to an office, but those that even have just workers, people that they're employing working remotely from home all the time, still need the resources of the business. And as an example, think about toner cartridges, right? Think about supplies that your business needs on a daily basis. What if we come to a point where we've been told that the pandemic has really gotten to a point where people can go back to work in their offices and business can hopefully resume from a normal or a new, better standpoint? Well, everybody's going to start being back in their offices using those big copiers and printers, and everybody's going to want all those toner cartridges. And so everybody's going to be looking to their suppliers all at the same time. There may be a shortage. So just think about everything you use every day and the people you count on to provide those services and those resources for you, and have a conversation with them. Make sure that they know where they're getting their resources from that they're going to provide to you. And if they're coming up with a shortage somewhere, you need to have an honest conversation with them, and you need to have a plan B. You need to maybe have another business partner, vendor, or somebody that provides those supplies to you and those resources so that you won't be caught short. And that's, those of us in the business continuity world, we're talking to each other all the time saying, this is key, this is critical, because there are going to be those shortages. And I would say one of the key things also for a good business, solid business continuity plan is to have a good crisis communication system in place. You want to be able, especially with everybody working remotely, everybody had to scramble back in March to get everybody working from home. Be honest with yourself. How was that communication? Were you able to communicate very well with everybody in your firm? If you weren't, this is the time to work on putting together a good crisis communication in place, whether it's a automated crisis communication system, a simple telephone tree. Test those systems out. Make sure that you're able to notify everybody at the same time. Everybody gets the same message. So that's a key part of a good business continuity plan. Darlene, can you switch to the next slide, please? And then I think it's, and I know Catherine's going to talk more about this, but from an operations, a business continuity standpoint, look at the culture of your business. Your values, your reputation are the things that are going to be come into play if there's any, in the face of any threat to your business. So you want to be known as the business that has preserved their culture, preserved the values, preserved their mission, and therefore their reputation is solid. You want to be known as that business that it doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a wildfire, in the middle of a hurricane, in the middle of an earthquake, wherever you are geographically, your reputation is solid and you're known as that business that they can just, doesn't matter. It's just like that, those ads for people that may remember, those people that are around my age, the commercials, it was Timex, right? takes a licking and keeps on ticking. Doesn't matter what happens, that Timex was still ticking for everybody. So you want to be known as that business. And to do that, you need good leadership, good communication, as I just mentioned, flexibility in the way your business works, and transparency in all your decisions. Your clients, your customers need to see a business that's very transparent, and you're upfront about everything you're doing to keep yourself resilient. So look at all of these things from a business continuity standpoint, evaluate. Obviously, you need to prioritize all of those initiatives to get your written business continuity plan in place, but get it done. So at this point, I'll turn back to Darlene and we can move on to our next panelist.
Hi, I'm Catherine Besser, and I think what I would love to do to kind of pile onto what Kathy just said is, talk a little bit about that culture and reputation and the paradoxes that we're all dealing with right now in terms of trying to keep that balance. So if we could change the slide. There we go. I think there are a couple of challenges now that we all face, and it may be important to call those out. First and foremost is what I think about is the paradox with people. I mean, everything that we hear and that we're all trying to do is to recognize that people are the key forward for any business. Honestly, talent is the most important thing that we all manage. But what's been created with COVID is not only an unusual focus on our talent, but I think as we head at some point to recovery, the paradox is going to be you've made them the center of everything that you do, all your communication, all of the accommodation, all of the ability to work from home. And what happens when you go back to work and they aren't necessarily the absolute center of everything? And so I think starting to plan for the changes that will happen to your workforce and with your workforce, as people aren't necessarily going to be able to work from home, or they're going to have to juggle children, and where they thought you were going to do everything for them, you now expect them to go back to being more independent. That is one of the challenges I think that we are all facing and will continue to face. The second challenge is really around change. This is the thing that we've all been dealing with again. It's the most important thing we're focused on right now. How do we adapt? How do we change our businesses? How do we move quickly? And yet at the same time, what you have to balance with that is you absolutely cannot change everything. You have to stay true to the things that are core to your business, to your operating model, to your culture. So throwing everything up in the air during this crisis, or even when we head to recovery, is the thing that is tempting at times, but also probably not pragmatic and ultimately not strategic. The fourth piece is in fact about strategy. We're all in a place where there's enormous pressure for innovation, for handling situations differently, for thinking forward. But at the same time, I think the real pressure is to stay focused on the day-to-day issues. Can you actually solve the problems that are right in front of you? Solve the problems for the customers that you have that are clear and present for them. Again, it's tempting to think about what comes next, and the issue will be you can lose the very business that you're running or managing by not managing through just the day-to-day for probably the foreseeable future. And then last but not least, I think as leaders, we've all been taught we're supposed to be strong, we're supposed to be optimistic, we're supposed to think about the future. And the reality right now is the only thing associates or customers want from leadership is that we're being authentic, that they can believe us, that we're real about what's happening, and that we're vulnerable as well. Not knowing all the answers, not even knowing all the questions anymore has become, I think, ground zero for the way most of us operate. And I think our associates and our customers and our suppliers are actually looking for leaders to be personal about what's happening, because that creates probably more trust than anything else will right now. Next slide. So what matters? You know, a lot of people, I think, have come to realize that this is opportunity knocking, and we need to answer the door as business leaders. And we need to take advantage of the cards that we've been dealt. This situation is not controllable by any of us, but the things that we can control are the things that drive the strategy of our business. What are our customers looking for now? What do they need? And what do we have to offer that will actually address that? And it's likely different. It's likely they need different things, and it's likely we're going to have to think about the answers in a whole new way. And in this world where social justice and social distancing now kind of underscore everything that we have to consider, what we offer probably has to shift. The key question, especially because I'm working for a community foundation right now, that we ask ourselves every day is what can our business do to help? And it's changing. The things that we used to do, the things that we're contemplating doing now are shifting, but they're shifting really by working backwards from what people in the community need. And then I think there are opportunities to begin to think about the future. Can you reposition your business to be a better alternative to other things that are out there? Can you move fast into markets because you've given it some thought? And what's actually going to motivate your team to get behind them? If you're starting to put those things together, then there's a path forward for your business. And my last slide. I saw this model the other day and I thought it was interesting, but I think there's some specificity you can put to this. You know, the balance in trying to keep people, communication, recovery, and sort of long-term business continuity all focused are really the keys to whether your business is going to thrive or survive. The truth is we all can only focus on one thing to keep our business on the thriving side, and that's revenue. If you're not generating revenue, then there is no path forward. And revenue comes first and foremost from keeping your existing customers. And I think of the sort of 5 big things that you have to do in order to thrive, to keep your current customers with you. First and foremost, you have to be oriented towards service. Whatever their challenge is your issue. And whatever their most important issue is your most important issue. That approach towards customer service is a key to retaining the revenue that you have. The second thing is actually probably technology. And Patrick's going to talk about that, so I don't want to steal his thunder. But we all need to be making sure that we are automating the things that can be automated, and that we're using technology to augment our people, not to replace them. Strong technology and strong people will actually help you grow the business, both in the current environment and the future environment as we head towards that. The third piece is innovation, but I don't think it's innovation in kind of the true entrepreneurial sense. I think it's innovation based on the strengths that you had and the new strengths that you think your business has. What's core to you that you can add sort of new products, new channels, new services to? Marketing is probably the 4th piece of that. And as we all know now, digital, if it wasn't a part of our universe before, now underscores everything that we do. And the world won't go back. So thinking about what your business has to offer and what you can do to drive a digital strategy as fast as possible is the 4th big piece. And then the last piece is relationships. Employees, customers, and suppliers, all of those relationships have altered now forever. And we need to think about how we're going to be very specific about strategies for those relationships. So at the end of the day, people above everything else, safety first. You need to be communicating more than you ever did. Resiliency is really thinking about what's on the other side. How do you recover? How do you put that business strategy in place? And how do you maintain the continuity that Catherine talked about in her presentation, because there is no tomorrow unless you keep your business running today. And with that, I think it's going to Lindsay.
Great, thanks so much, Catherine. Appreciate it. Darlene, if you could just go ahead and jump right to the next slide. So thank you again. My name is Lindsay Ragab from SunTrust, now Truist. And from a treasury perspective, we'll continue the discussion that Kathy and Catherine started, but focus a little bit more around the impacts of your treasury team. The COVID-19 crisis has definitely underscored the importance of Treasury's role. Some of the challenges are on your right there as you think through those, and as I'm sure you know very, very well indeed yourselves. But thinking about the internal workflow, how that has changed. One of the things that came to mind for any of us who were in the workforce when 9/11 occurred, you may recall all the planes were grounded. And what many may have forgotten is that on those planes were checks. That's how we moved money in this country. If you had a customer or a vendor that was a plane flight away, and if you wrote a check, that check was on that plane. So money didn't move. And I won't go down the rabbit hole about the Check 21 legislation and how that brought about remote deposit capability. But that crisis is what led us to realizing we needed automation when it came to money movement. So we're in that situation again today, thinking about how can you continue your workflow, how to think about your payments and your receipts and avoid as much disruption as possible. What can you do to continue that cash flow cycle? Looking at your liquidity position, understanding your cash flow, your cash forecasting, line of credit availability if you're in your line of credit. So all of those factors where, again, it becomes part of the knowing, the visibility, and then what you can do with that. There's another aspect of this as well, which is fraud. So I'll turn over to Mike Kelly for that.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay, and thanks for having me. And if we can go back, I think, to the prior slide there, yeah, just a couple things to talk about. That's okay. So I'm in the Information Security Division. We see threats every day. We actually talk to our peers in the financial industry, talk to our cyber intel groups that we work with. And so as an organization, when you look at this, what have you seen in terms of fraud? Well, I can probably say the last study, the AFP study last year, over 81% of organizations had some sort of fraud. Now that was pre-COVID. In COVID times, we've seen a significant increase, not just us, but the federal authorities. So when you look at that, the bad actors have been just waiting. The uptick in terms of phishing, vendor email compromise, CEO compromise, where the email comes from, it looks like a CEO, has significantly increased. When you look at the organization and what you've experienced, just take a step back and look at Google. Google has blocked over 18 million emails, phishing emails a day, and that's an uptick right around the April timeframe. So they're just waiting. You know, we're working remotely. Things are happening quick. We're relying on email, not talking to each other. So that one click could really mean a difference in the organization. And then lastly, what are you doing to look at the user entitlements? We're all using digital platforms. Have you really looked as an organization at who has rights? We call it privileged access management. Does the CFO need access to HR information or vice versa, right? There should be a separation. So looking at that internally, your internal systems, and then through the bank systems too that we offer, making sure you've got those controls and dual controls in place. Next slide.
Yep, thanks, Mike. So Mike had referenced on the previous slide a study by AFP, and that's what these statistics are as well. So AFP is Association for Financial Professionals. This study was done in April of this year. So keep in mind, you know, that was just just over a month into this pandemic. So it would be very interesting to see if the statistics have changed at all now that we're at the end of September and we're still very much in the throes of the pandemic. But the first statistic there in terms of transitioning from paper to payments, paper payments to electronic payments, excuse me, 75% of businesses, and this is ranging from small business to large what we'd call middle market companies, of the importance and having to take that action, which I had alluded to before about paper checks not being able to move. So, again, this again goes to, when we're talking about automation, the importance of treasury-specific technology in your treasury groups and in your companies.
Yeah, and Lindsay, I mean, around the electronic movement, while that is probably the most preferable method, right, to move towards a more automated process, there's still a lot of changes as it results to checks, right? Organizations are still writing checks. I guess back to pre-check 21 in 2004, there was over 36 billion checks written a year. Last study was about 15 billion. So we're still writing a ton of checks. So that means, as organizations, how have you migrated? What have you done to change your process, right? You don't have people in the office where you can walk down and just have them sign. So organizations have maybe shifted towards opening up that communication. If there's checks over X amount of dollars, let's say, $20,000, maybe you have an internal approval process versus having to go around to get checks signed, right? But again, forcing more organizations to look at electronic methods. And the other thing is, a lot of organizations have reached out to us to talk about ways to outsource checks, right? The banks, we can actually help organizations if they upload a file, we can cut the checks for them. So there's a big uptick there. And then if you look at, over 55% of organizations have contacted us, the bank, which, we look at ourselves as advisors. It's a shared responsibility. We want to make sure we educate our clients and that they are working with us to put the fraud mitigation controls in place to protect the accounts.
Yeah, so again, it still goes back to what I'd mentioned before about the emphasis on your cash forecasting, understanding your cash position, what the liquidity looks like, and having that visibility. Of course, as many of you joining us today very well know, that there had to become a delay on any planned capital expenditures. You may have had to delay hiring new employees. Unfortunately, many have had to deal with reduction in force. And what does that mean in terms of the pressure on your cash flow cycle? Darlene, if you could go to the next page, please. So you've heard me say automation. You've heard me say, the importance of digital technology. Well, what does that really mean? So in terms of adapting and Kathy mentioned business continuity. So how can you bring about that business continuity, that automation? There are services available to you to get away from the writing of paper checks as much as possible to help you gain efficiencies, even reduce costs. Next to wires, check is the most expensive form of payment. So anytime you can utilize a P card, stands for purchase card, utilize a purchase card, utilize ACH, which is automated form, and it is a more efficient when you're trying to pay multiple vendors at once. It's more efficient and more cost efficient than wires. But again, trying to move yourselves and also influence the behavior of your vendors to accept payments electronically. That then goes into, again, kind of reiterating what I've been saying a lot here, is looking at your cash flow. looking at how can you slow down your payables without negatively impacting vendor relationships. How can you speed up your receivables, again, without a negative effect on your customer relationships? I think both Kathy and Catherine mentioned the importance of relationship, and that's really what this is trying to enhance your own businesses, but not have any type of repercussion with those you do business with. So again, looking at automation, using any type of a e-payables, which again is type of a virtual card, purchase card, ACH transactions, lockbox, which again, like Mike said, while check writing has gone down, it still is very prevalent. So having your checks go to a facility that's managed by a third party that's not your office, so that those checks could still get deposited. Merchant services is the ability to accept credit card as a form of payment. So just as we're saying how you as a business could utilize a purchase card or an e-payable solution to pay your vendors, it's the ability for you to accept credit card payments from your customers as well, so that you can speed up your receivables process. And again, Mike, back to you on the fraud mitigation standpoint.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. So, as we look at, and I mentioned earlier, the partnership that we have with our clients in reaching out, there are several cyber and various fraud mitigation controls that can be in place. So, we offer solutions back to the checks, right, where organization can upload a file of checks, and that way, as those checks clear the bank, we know exactly what checks have been written, and that's called positive pay. So as a check clears, if it does not match that file and it's truly fraudulent, whether they change the dollar amount or change the check number, the organization has the ability to then review the check and to return the check. So that fraud mitigation on the front end for checks is extremely important, and really looking at every single account, right? Even checks, you may not write checks on certain accounts. Maybe it's just a receivables account, but ensuring that you've locked down that account number, not just with a check fraud protection, but also looking at ACH fraud control protection. And that's really just think of it as a lock and a key to the account, so that someone cannot debit the account. You give authorization to your payroll company or to one of your suppliers to pool funds. And so you can set limits, you can control who debits. And again, really just looking at that process. And then also ensuring, again, back to who has the ability, to reconcile, to look at those checks. That's internal control. So back to ensuring you've got a strong internal control environment. And then if there is, checks that are received, let's say, at your organization, making sure you shred those checks, that they're not just laying around in someone's home. So ensuring the data is protected is really important. The next slide.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. And it really comes down to this very first line here says every dollar you make rests on your ability to meet your customers' needs. It also rests on being able to meet your employees' needs as well. And Catherine had, and I should have written down the quote that Catherine mentioned towards the end there, but it was about, being in business today so that you can be in business tomorrow. So, really understanding where every dollar is coming from, where it's going to, and how to best manage that. Not being afraid to change behavior. We have all had to change behavior, whether it's within the work environment or in our own personal lives. I know I have found myself becoming not just a manager of a team within Truist, but a teacher. I'm the lunch lady. I am IT support, and every other kind of aspect that I wasn't planning on, but have had to change my behavior and help my children change their behavior as well. But looking ahead, what we can do as a trusted business partner to help you identify, making tweaks, again, looking to see if there are ways that we can help identify, ways you can slow down your payables, speed up your receivables, and make that cash flow cycle as efficient as possible for your business. The thing that I would like to leave with the thought here for you all is that we are all in this together. You are not alone. This is something that's affecting everyone. Be open-minded. Don't be afraid to lean on any trusted partner you have. You know, the people that are on this panel, if your accountant, your attorney, you know, your neighbor, talking out loud with people can really help with the idea sharing. Share your best practices. Try to help lift up, you know, a peer in your industry of what may have worked for you or what may not have worked, so you can save someone that challenge. One of the items too that Catherine had mentioned was about leadership and about being optimistic. One of the core values when BB&T and SunTrust merged and we developed our new purpose, mission, and values for Truist, one of the values is actually happiness, and that positive energy can change lives. And so while there is a lot of doom and gloom out there, you know, again, try to choose to be happy and try to choose to be optimistic so you can help your employees and you can help your customers as well. Darlene, thank you. That's it for us.
Thank you.
Right.
All right. Thank you, guys. You guys hear me okay? Yeah.
Yep.
All right, great. So Patrick Butler from Proxios. Thank you guys for having me on. I'm going to, kind of talk a little bit about some of the things we can do kind of post-COVID or, as we start to embrace, work from anywhere culture kind of longer term. Right, and the COVID's really changed the way we think about where and how we work. And, a lot of these organizations, a lot of you guys probably are starting to embrace that, that work from anywhere culture kind of long term. You're thinking through, what does this mean in the next 3 to 5 years for us? And it's really starting to drive the need for better technology, but it's also reducing the need for traditional office space. And so as you might expect, what we're starting to see is kind of the spend on technology is going up while people are considering kind of offsetting that increased expense by reducing the amount of real estate investment they're making. So I'll just talk, for the next couple of minutes about a couple of technology ideas that you might want to consider. They're going to be a little more tactical in nature. And hopefully they're useful as you kind of think through your work from home strategy, your work from anywhere strategy, and as you evaluate whether or not you want to keep that traditional office space. So the first thing is really kind of over the next 3, 6, 12 months, right? You guys are going to have technology leases coming up for kind of renewal or expiring. You're going to have maintenance renewals coming up. You're going to have hardware fully appreciating, and at each one of those kind of decision points, you're going to have an opportunity to kind of reevaluate what you're buying in a way that helps improve that work from home or work from anywhere experience for your people. So take endpoints as an example, PCs and laptops, right? A lot of organizations kind of, the sales force gets a laptop, everyone else gets a PC. Well, long term, if you're going to be working from home more frequently, a lot of organizations are going towards, almost entirely laptops. And, when you buy a laptop, make sure it's got a good camera. I mean, it seems silly, but, make sure it's got a good camera and make sure the camera's at the top of the screen, not the bottom of the screen. I mean, some stuff as simple as that, because video conferencing is so much more important than it used to be. And, also make sure it's light and durable, right? You don't want people lugging around really heavy laptops and, they're going to be moving around a lot. You want to make sure as it's bumping around, it doesn't break frequently. So make sure you've got a light, durable laptop with a great camera in it. Phones is another kind of area where I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve as we think through kind of a reduced office footprint. Traditional phone systems have hardware requirements that have to be in your office somewhere, and a lot of you probably still have some of these legacy-based phone systems. But the new cloud-based phone systems out there don't require really any hardware in your offices at all. In fact, they don't even require handsets, most of them. And so, I would, challenge you guys to take a look at some of those so you kind of eliminate the need to have on-site hardware and also kind of eliminate the need to have those on-site handsets or the physical handsets with you, right? A lot of these new cloud companies have mobile apps that you can install on your phones, your cell phones. And so just maybe get people really nice Bluetooth headsets that connect to their mobile phone and have them use that mobile app instead of the physical handset. That way it's with them, whether they're at Starbucks, in the office, at a customer site, or on the road, right? They're making inbound and outbound calls from their work number. Kind of, teeing up kind of a collaboration conversation on phones, right? Phones and collaboration tools like video conferencing kind of go hand in hand. And most of you probably have video conferencing tools today. I imagine probably all of you do. But what a lot of organizations don't know is that actually most of these cloud-based phone vendors out there have video conferencing capabilities built into it, and/or that can be bundled together. So, look at potentially, as you kind of look at cloud-based phone systems, bundling in those video conferencing capabilities too at the same time. It's going to do two things for you. First, it's going to create that much better, seamless user experience, right? One tool to use is always easier than multiple tools to use. And the second thing is, when you bundle the two products together, you're going to get a lower price point, ultimately saving you guys some money. Two examples of systems you might want to look at. Jive is a great one. Microsoft Teams is actually getting a lot of traction now in the audio and video conferencing space too. So I would recommend those two. Moving on to security. Security obviously changes fairly significantly with a mobile workforce, and a lot of the traditional security tools that you're using or may have been using require people to quickly check into the office, right, to get updates. So things like antivirus and patching tools that require you to actually be in the office to get your updates or get your patches, they're just not going to work anymore. So, you guys need to be thinking through kind of how do we position our security posture, or how do we posture our security so that it works, no matter where our employees are. It's just so important as people kind of move around to different locations to make sure that they're properly protected. And the other thing you're going to see kind of as you develop a work from home culture is people are logging in now from all over the place, right? That didn't used to be true. And as people start to work for multiple locations, right, you're going to start to open things up to the internet, or the ability for people to connect to your office productivity apps and your data remotely. And so you're going to really want to make sure you've got the controls in place, the technology and controls in place to help you identify kind of unusual login activity, or maybe somebody's logging in from an unusual location. And so once you identify that, you want to make sure you've got the controls in place or the process in place to make sure you know how to react to that situation. It's something you can kind of do along those lines that's relatively quick and easy. Probably something you should do regardless is deploying something called multi-factor authentication, right? A lot of you probably have the banking apps where you either get the text or the pop-up on your phone because you've got the app running and you hit OK, to log in. That mitigates a lot of, not entirely, but a lot of kind of the remote threats of people logging into your email accounts or trying to connect to your data remotely. We see a lot of our customers using, Microsoft's actually got some native multi-factor authentication apps built into their products if you're using things like Office 365. If you're not using that, or you're using actually multiple cloud applications, a product that we see a lot of people using is a product called Duo. So those are kind of the tools and maybe some recommendations and things you can look at to optimize user experience. Let's talk for a second now about what you can do to kind of reduce the dependency in the office. So as people start to work remotely, now hopefully you no longer need quite as much real estate, and you can save a little bit of money by reducing it. But the reality is that a lot of businesses out there have significant investment still in hardware that sits on site somewhere, right, in their office somewhere, in their data closet, in maybe an on-site data center. These this IT investment is not something that just kind of easily moves as you either downsize or maybe move to some cheaper or smaller space. So kind of reevaluate the way you're handling your data centers and your servers, and start to look at things like cloud servers, Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS, there's a few others, Google, and/or look at turning a traditional server into maybe a cloud application, a SaaS-based application. By doing that, you're going to kind of remove that or decouple the office from the physical servers and the data and your applications, right? And all of a sudden now you can move anywhere you want, anytime you want. It becomes very easy because all that data, all the servers, everything you're using is up in the cloud somewhere. I think by doing that, right, all of a sudden now it frees you up to do, or gives you a lot more flexibility when you're considering alternative real estate. And the other thing you're going to want to really look at as people work from home, it seems like a small thing, but it's a big thing, is, bandwidth becomes much more important as people work from home, having kind of reliable and adequate bandwidth at their houses. You know, because you want them to have a positive experience. And so, you know, you're really going to want to consider implementing maybe bandwidth standards within your organization. So telling your employees kind of, here's what we expect you to have if and when you're going to be working from home, to make sure that you can adequately do your job on a daily basis. And you know, that'll work for most people, but you know, for those in rural areas, you know, alternative that might be, you know, while you might not be able to get adequate bandwidth, maybe supply them with things like MiFis, right? MiFis tend to be fairly good alternatives, and sometimes, you know, we have poor internet service, you might have decent cellular service that you can tap into to get good internet. So, you know, look at doing something like that instead of, you know, requiring some, you know, higher bandwidth requirements for organizations that are in, or people who are in rural areas. And finally, you'll really start to look at you know, your processes, and anything that is requiring you or your people to come into the office to do something, right? Really kind of question whether or not you need to continue to do it that way, or maybe you can automate it or digitize it. Something as simple as, right, looking at a DocuSign type product, right? I've seen a number of organizations that, you know, come into the office to sign and scan something, right? That's, you know, to me, that's crazy when you have products out there like a DocuSign. So, you know, that's a simple example, but there's, I'm sure, other things you could be looking at, other processes that people are coming into the office to kind of execute and might be able to, through technology, to automate or digitize and allow them to do that from home. Let me flip the slide, please. So once we give everybody all the technology, you know, to work effectively from home, what's going to happen is, you know, we're going to require different behaviors, right? These new technologies are going to require people to work a little differently, maybe given them tools they're not used to using. So training is going to become absolutely critical on the tools and the new processes that you expect your people to follow as a part of the work from home. So, you know, some of the things I've seen kind of work well is, you know, leverage the collaboration tools, right? You've gone out now and bought your cloud-based phone system. You've tacked on or bundled in the collaboration tools to do the video conferencing. Well, a lot of those software companies also have things like, you know, learning modules that you can bolt on, so you can do things like webinars like we're on right now, right? And you can record them and post them online. So I'm gonna try to leverage those tools that you're already paying for. And you know, virtual grab bag lunches are, you know, extremely effective, right? Just get people in on their lunch break, 15, 20 minutes, you know, have a topic a week or topic a month, whatever you want to do, but something to kind of do that continual learning or enable people to continually learn about or reinforce things maybe they've already heard. And finally, if, you know, that's a little daunting, you know, maybe you can partner with a training company or an IT provider. There are a lot of organizations out there that are able to provide you know, really strong training programs for the tools. You know, you go to you know, the cloud-based phone systems is another example of you know, organizations that often have really robust kind of either pre-recorded training modules, or they'll come on site or do a virtual training for you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I just want to make sure I'm not. Oh, okay, I'm not muted. Anybody have any questions regarding the? Just want to double check here. I didn't see any in the chat box.